this is Pam Reese with Adventures in Aging, and I'm here again with my very good friend,
Gary Vandenberg. Pam, it's great to be back, and thank you to our sponsor, Stridelight. Stridelight.net provides quality diabetic shoes, custom inserts, orthotics, all lower extremity needs. For over 20 years, they've been providing quality feet-related products. Please mention Stridelight to your doctor or podiatrist for the best solutions to your feet needs. Thank you, Stridelight. Pam, what is today's topic?
So, Gary, today we're going to talk about stories and reminiscing.
Storytelling. I love storytelling.
I know that you do.
I think my whole life is storytelling. So
I think you live one big story, Gary.
Don't I? Oh, yes.
Yes. So there's a difference between reminiscing and telling a story.
No.
And the difference between those two is that reminiscing is remembering great moments in time, your memories.
Now, when people have like Alzheimer's, dementia, or you get older, don't you reminisce more? I think we all do.
Well, people with Alzheimer's and dementia tend to have better recall from the earlier days in life.
Oh, okay.
So then there's stories, the storytellers, such as yourself.
Okay.
And people tell stories as part of an emotional connection. Right?
Oh, yeah. There's always the emotion, and there's always trying to, convey some kind of an interesting story, an interest. I always try to bring some humor or interest into these things.
Yes, and you try to create, even if it's subconsciously, an emotional connection with whoever your audience is. And so stories tend to be embellished a little bit, tend to be more exciting, tend to be a little bit more content than maybe the reality of the story. We're reminiscing. We tend to truly think of that memory, even though we're not 100% accurate all the time on reminiscing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So reminiscing. So I'm sure you have stories too. Like when we were growing up, we'd go to my grandmother's house for Easter, right? It was always a big deal. She had a little house, but we could cram about 20 relatives in there for 2 days straight. And just the Easter egg hunt and the food that she made and all of that. Now, is that reminiscing, I guess? Is that more of that than a story?
That's a reminiscence.
Okay. And
so a story, which you have, Gary, is about an event that is beyond the memory.
Okay.
And so I know you have a couple of them.
Oh,
I've
got a couple of them. I guess I could start with one here where it was the Indy 500 one. All right. I wrote down a few notes here. So it's the 100th anniversary of the Indy 500 a couple years ago. 350,000 people showed up to this car race. Can you imagine that?
And you were there.
And I was there. I was there with about 8 or 10 relatives. We drove over to Indianapolis. I used to live in Indianapolis. And to go to these type of races, you have to park like a mile away, if not more. And as I get out of the car and as I'm walking, different people are looking at me and they're doing that chin up like they know me. Have you ever seen somebody? Yeah. They're smiling. Some people are kind of like giving me in my mind, I think they're like waving at me or acknowledging me. I'm like, well, that's interesting. I've never.
You thought you looked good then.
Maybe they remember me. Who knows, right? I'm not I'm not famous. So we get in there, and part of this whole event was there's something called a snake pit. Did you ever hear of the snake pit?
I've heard of mosh pits.
Snake pits. And so within the Indy 500, they've got this EDM concert where they crank up the music and things are flying in there. And some of my sons go, hey, you got to come in there with us. This is awesome in here, right?
You're right.
So I go in there and people are like giving me high fives and they're hugging me. I'm thinking they're all on drugs or something because how come everyone's
loving you.
Forget that race going on outside this thing. Everyone's having a great time. I'm the guy. So
you're the guy.
So, jumping around, having a great time with people. And I come out of this mosh pit, I guess. And I go back and here's my daughter. And I said, I can't believe this is the most awesome day of my life. Everyone, I'm like a celebrity here. She goes,
everybody knows me.
She goes, well, take a look at what you're wearing. I said, what do you mean? She goes, well, look at your hat. I said, I got that at like Goodwill. It's like a green hat. And it's like a camo hat. It's a camouflage kind of hat.
Yeah.
And then she says, look at your shirt. Well, I have on like a 9/11 patriotic shirt.
Oh.
She says, they all think you're a veteran. I'm not a veteran. Isn't that awful?
Yeah. That's awful of
it's
you.
an awful story. But, when it comes to the storytelling, in some regards, that story that I just said, it's got what? It's got some emotion in there, right? People,
oh, no, you took me from laughing to kind of feeling bad.
I feel really bad. I'm not going to wear that outfit again, I guess, in that sense. But just the whole thought of what a good time we had there, but also at the same time how bad I felt at the end, not being a veteran and realizing, I guess, on one side, if I was a veteran, how great it would be to have people recognize me. But on the other side, they weren't interested in Gary Vandenberg at all. Right.
Oh, so you had a bit of a letdown.
No, it was more like an ironic letdown, but yeah. But stories have those elements, don't they? And we've got a couple of stories.
And so for me, I always tell stories that relate to either family, holidays, or my college years. Right? Those are my biggest stories.
Those are your themes.
Those are my themes. And so one of the themes, college years, is I always used to tell a lot more than I do today, but about how my roommate and I would host these dinners for our then 18, 19, 20-year-old college friends, right? Who does that?
A formal dinner, or this just a picnic kind of dinner?
So my roommate Barb and I actually looked at them as kind of a formal dinner. She would make lasagna for dinner, or we would make some kind of a meatloaf and mashed potatoes, and we would even have candles, and all of our friends would come, and even our friends would bring friends, because it was an event to go to Barb and Pam's for their weekly dinner. And Gary, over the years, that story became times 10 into like a luxurious candlelit dinner for 100 of my closest friends in college, when in reality it was probably 10 people coming to a very casual type of dinner.
Did it have themes? Did you have themes? Did you dress differently, or it was the same? It's the same. It was just meet me here next Thursday. And
no, it was like, hey, dinner at our place tonight, and then when everyone left, we'd be saying, next Tuesday. And I swear, Barb and I did that almost every week, the whole time we were in college.
Yeah. I wonder if stories are more common, though, as you're younger. Most of my stories happened when I was, probably under 25 years of age. Is that commonplace, do you think?
I think because those were more fun years of your life.
I often say to my kids, I said, I peaked when I was about 19, I think, when you peak in life. But
you have a great story when you were a little bit older and working.
Oh, yeah.
That I'd love for you to tell.
And it wasn't that much older. I've got a couple of them. One was, I'm a new administrator there at the nursing home, right? And so being a new guy, and it was not the owner, obviously, but somehow my office is in the basement. How's that sound? The lower level, amongst all these boxes, right? I'm down there, hanging out down there. And the owner's barber's son needed a job in the summertime. Okay. And so this falls not so much as to in what's called a narrative linear thing. This is non-linear, linear. Did you ever hear of such phrases? Because I bounce back and forth in this story. Okay.
Okay.
So now you bounce ahead many years, and I'm at my father-in-law's funeral in the same town, and people are coming up to me, and they're saying, I can't believe that happened. I'm still dealing with that many years later in kind of a funny, odd way of what happened that summer in the basement there at the nursing home, right?
This sounds like a movie.
Right.
This sounds like what happened that summer.
Right. All right. So we go back. So the barber's son comes in, and unfortunately he had some health issues. He had hearing issues. He couldn't hear very well at all. He had hearing aids, and he had some other issues, and a very nice kid and everything like that. And I was reading all these business motivation books at the time, how to be the best, manager of all time. And
you thought you would use your knowledge.
And he had one job, and that was to set up these names, the residents' names, like Mrs. Jones. You put it in a little plastic thing, and then you trace it, and it carves in her name, so you can put it at her door, right?
Oh, yeah, right.
So he would come in each day, a couple hours each day, and he would go into this little room next to me, and he would be building his little Mrs. Jones, and he was so frustrated. He was frustrated, right, because he couldn't do it. And he even wrapped towels around his arms and to try to, correct his limitations, and was swearing. He would swear and yelling and stuff. And I would sit there and always, I had these motivation books. Hey, don't give up. You're number one. Just think, remember, you're number one. Don't give up. Try it. I don't really, let's just, make the most of it. You're a winner. Oh, I was giving him these fingers. I was pointing at him. You're number one. And he would try to write things on a little scrap of paper. He was trying to tell me something. I said, you don't need to, you do not ever need to explain anything to me. You're number one.
You were just pumping him up.
All right. So now we get back to this non-linear, storytelling.
Yeah.
Years later, I have to drive it's the board of director of a $10 billion company to the airport. I don't know how I got this job, but I climb in the car.
Well, you're the chauffeur.
I'm the chauffeur. And he says, what is your name? I said, Gary Vandenberg. He goes, you're Gary Vandenberg? I said,
oh, no.
You're the Gary Vandenberg? I said, yeah. Why is that? He goes,
yeah.
We use your story about that summer at the nursing home as a training sessions of how to be the worst manager of all time. Type of thing.
Gary. And you thought you were being the best manager.
No, I wasn't. So I'm going to
tell me why.
So now we go back, 20 years before this. So each day he would come in and he would swear and he'd throw these things around and I would tell him he's number one. Well, one day he does communicate to me that he's gotten a different job. He's going to go work and he's going to paint he's going to do something at rest areas. I remember that. Okay. I said,
yeah.
I said, well, I'm glad this was a stepping stone to something better in your life. And, good luck to you. So he leaves. And the next guy that comes down to work on this machine, he turns it on and he goes to make the first sign, right? This little engraver sign. He turns it on, grabs the thing and yells out, "Oh, I'm being electrocuted." The thing was never grounded. Okay.
Gary, no, you were trying to electrocute him.
Well, I didn't know it, but I was shocking this poor kid for the last couple of weeks here before he finally quit. Well, again, so, it gets fixed and we can make signs, but it never struck me. And
so as you're trying to motivate him, he's number one. He's the man.
He's
right?
trying to communicate to me. I'm being electrocuted. I'm being shocked. You're torturing me down here. Isn't that terrible? And
no, Gary, another one that makes me feel bad.
Yeah, these Gary stories make you feel bad.
That's awful.
In some regards, though, everybody was fine. He lived his life and everything like that. But the whole idea was when it comes to stories, sometimes they bounce around, too. Do you see what I'm saying? That story had the funeral where everyone's gathered around my father-in-law's casket, and they're all looking at me going, I can't believe you shocked that poor kid all summer long, right?
Oh, my gosh.
To the, the chairman of the board looking at me going, that you're probably one of the worst managers I've ever known in my God. I'm like, I was only 22 years old, cut me a break.
So Gary, I guess the question is, did you learn anything from this story?
Yeah, try to be a better manager. Yeah. How's that sound? But
oh my gosh.
But the thing about storytelling, I tell them all the time. I told one just yesterday. I got to tell you real quick here.
All right, tell me.
And it had to do with years ago. We were talking about death and dying for some reason at the nursing home, right? Yesterday, and
of course you were.
And I said I remember going to a nursing home in Illinois one time, and I went in to visit a resident, and he said, "What do you think of my tree outside my window?" Right? And I said, "Very nice tree. It's like 15 feet tall, or 10 to 15 feet. Lots of little leaves on it." And I said, "That's really nice." He goes, "One day, many years ago, they had a ceremony here in my room, and they had brought in hospice, and they thought I was going to die, and they had a ceremony out the window of planting that tree."
Oh my gosh!
in my memory, my legacy. He said it made me so mad, I decided not to die after all.
And he lived.
He's lived 10 years later. The tree's 10 feet tall. And he's laying in the bed looking at it, going, "There's my legacy tree."
Yeah, that's motivational. That's a great story.
Isn't that funny? So that's kind of a third person kind of story, isn't it? So you're kind of hearing their version of something that's happened in their life. That's interesting.
No, so a lot of people like to tell stories about others, right?
Oh yeah.
Things that happen to other people.
Right.
And then those are the most embellished stories in life.
And some of them
you can add anything.
Some are urban legends. Have you had urban legends in your life?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Somebody says something and And I said, you got to be kidding, because that happened to somebody I know too. They got their kidneys removed. They saw Michael Jackson in the elevator, whatever the stupid story was.
So, Gary, just because you just now brought that up, I'm thinking of those urban legends of things that we've heard our whole life. We thought it was real. Yeah. And then you're talking to someone unrelated.
Oh, yeah.
And they bring it up because they knew somebody. And immediately you're thinking, do we know the same people? Right?
No, it's a made-up story. That's what that's all about.
Oh, my gosh. Well, those can be fun as well, right?
Yeah, those are excellent.
So then we talk about memories, right? Memories that turn into a story. But those are needed in life as part of our culture, as part of who we are. I mean, it can actually get kind of deep psychologically.
Oh, yeah. Well, you think about before, like, the Bible was written, they had to sit around and tribe things and convince people that these stories mattered and carry them forth, right? Think about that.
That's correct.
Up until a couple hundred years ago, people didn't. I think they even had pencils. Did they? Pens and pencils. I'm not sure when that was invented, but imagine people didn't write stuff down for a long, long time.
Well, think of the Egyptians, right? Who told stories through pictures.
Yeah, that took a long time to carve that story. Let me tell you a story. Give me a couple thousand years to put it down.
So on a serious note, the practice of spending time looking back, right? Because it's all about looking back in life. That helps the evolution of characteristics like candor, serenity, and wisdom. We don't even think that there's this psychological aspect to that, right?
Oh, I don't think so. Yeah, I do think people, sometimes when they hear a story, they can relate. See what I can relate to that. They can relate to that. And people do, when you first meet somebody, don't you try to find something in common?
You try to find rapport.
Right.
Yes.
And so sometimes I found when I bump into somebody and they say, oh, I'm from this town or that town, I seem to always know somebody from that area or some story.
Yes.
So that's my way of connecting, I guess. Does that make sense? And
so when my mom was alive and had Alzheimer's, I would always tell the caregivers or the volunteers that would go in and speak to her, I would always give them her life story, right? We'll talk about Fairmont, West Virginia. Talk about the Chrysler stamping plant in Twinsburg. Talk about making meatloaf. Talk about having dinners where you had a bread, vegetable, a meat, and a dessert at every dinner. Because those were things that my mom could still relate to. Right. Yeah. In life. Not even knowing why.
Yeah, but it builds that trusting, a little bit of that trust relationship and comfort level.
Exactly.
When you get to talk to somebody and they tell you those types of stories. And there are stories. I recently was telling a group of people about my neighbor across the street and how he saved the town in World War II. Didn't know it till his funeral. And here's something by his casket from the town that when he was like 15 or 16 years old, he went over from the United States and did something and ended up saving an entire town. Can you imagine that? So, I mean, it's interesting.
Yeah.
And I always wonder why we don't get these stories until after you're dead. Do you know what I mean? You're at the funeral, you're reading the obituary going, wow, I wish I would have known some of those things before they passed so that we could have connected, or I'd like to hear more about those stories.
But if you notice when you go to either weddings, baby showers, birthdays, funerals, there's always the storyboards, right? People make storyboards, graduations, that show your life in photos.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Pictures. Yeah. They have the slideshow and it shows them fishing or boating or at a much younger age. Yeah. Those are great. I wonder why we don't do it when we're alive though. It'd be like kind of like, your Facebook or whatever it might be is saying, here, let me give you a quick overview of my life here.
Maybe it would be considered bragging. I don't know, right?
Oh, yeah. I'm sure it is. Yeah, there's a degree. Because you're always putting a positive thing out there. You're not going to say, well, here's a picture of me in my most miserable time of my life.
Do we ever? Well, unless we're, into that thing where misery loves company, where you tell your miserable stories.
Here's when I was broke. Here's when I was kicked out of my apartment.
Right,
Here's when my car broke down, you know.
And the other person say, no, I got one even better.
I got a worse story than that.
Yes, yeah, there is something to that as well, right?
Well, there is. I do. You know, one of my weaknesses, I do try to outdo somebody's story a lot of times. You know what I mean? Oh yeah, they'll say some story, and I go, that's weak. You know, I can outdo that story with my next story. You don't ever do.
I can top that story.
I can top that story. Oh yeah, that's half the fun of doing storytelling is outdoing the other person.
Gosh. You know what? One of the stories that you tell that I love is the one when you were little and fell through. Oh,
yeah. Okay. Want to hear that story real quick?
Yeah.
Tell for our podcasters, they may have heard this, but my earliest, I guess, story of my life was I was about, how old are you when you can walk? Like 2? Something like that.
18 months.
Yeah, I'm 2 years.
But you really don't have a lot of memory.
I'm 2 years old. My brother's 3 years older than me, and there's a house across the street being built. It's all like the wooden stuff. So I follow him over there. I can't even comprehend, but I can remember when this happened. So that shows how it's a weird early memory. Yeah. I'm following him over there. My diaper, I remember, and then
okay, where's Mom?
Yeah, that's the question in a lot of these stories I have growing up. Where's Mom?
Oh my gosh.
But I get over to this house. He goes down. He goes somewhere. I go up to the second floor. All right. And
you're probably crawling up to the second floor.
I'm walking around. I walk in the bathroom on the second floor, and somebody put like cardboard over a hole in like where the bathtub is going to be. Next thing you know, I'm flying through the air, right? And I land on a pile of garbage, kind of sticks and stones and whatever it is at the basement.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, my legs going the wrong direction, and my head's kind of bleeding.
You're a baby.
But I'm a fat little baby. I'm probably weighing.
Sturdy.
Yeah, I'm sturdy baby. So my brother who comes down, he's always been like a skin and bones kind of guy, right? So
yeah.
He sees me down there, and brother picks me up and can barely carry me because I weigh as much as him probably. Carries me out to the yard, and he's like 5 or 6, right? So think about these Asians. And we have this neighbor across the street from India, which is tied in with the story for somehow. And he comes out and he says, John, please let me help you. It looks like Gary needs help. Yeah. And with tears in my eyes, my brother looks at him with tears in his eyes. He says, he ain't heavy. He's my brother.
Gary.
That was before that song even became famous.
Okay. I feel like you've heard that song and then subliminally, subconsciously, you took it and
I was only like 2 or 3, so I don't remember very much. All I remember is that I don't. Where were my parents? I'm sure they were somewhere. I remember.
I have so many questions about that story.
My sister said because my leg hurt or something, I twisted it. That I didn't walk for like months. They had to carry me around for some reason. It's like a weird kind of thing.
Gary, you were a baby that was injured. Right?
I wasn't. He ain't heavy as my brother. I weighed more than him. That's what's funny about that story. I weigh a lot more than him still.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's funny. There's a funny element, but also kind of a sad one. Another sad one.
Gary's stories are.
Gary, I need your stories to be more uplifting.
High and low points of my storytelling. Yes. Oh, that's funny.
So stories are actually meant as part of our survival in life.
Why is that?
Deep.
Why is that?
Because they follow us. They follow us through generations. They become vital codes to our survival. They become truths, and they become beliefs. As you were talking about the Bible,
right?
It becomes our culture and our belief and the way we live. So there has to be stories from generation to generation. Otherwise, we would lose the history, right? We would lose our belief systems.
It's tradition. It's the tradition. And, it takes, just think of how many times certain stories have been passed along over and over again. And on the positive side, there's some great storytellers. I always think of like Walt Disney. Walt Disney had to be one of the best storytellers of all time. Everything from Mickey Mouse to Cinderella, everything else. Where'd all this stuff come from? I'm sure there's other people contributing it to it, but the idea that he was able to tell that story, visually,
yes,
and that's changed all of our lives.
But think about a Disney movie, Gary, on another note. Why are parents always dead? Or why is there only one parent? I mean, it's a thing. Did you ever notice?
And I never thought about it, but yeah,
think about
there's a lot of times the parents are missing in those stories. Maybe maybe my life's a Disney story, right? And
maybe it is.
But there's that storyteller. The other one that comes to mind also is Tony Robbins. If you've ever listened to any of his things, this guy's an amazing storyteller, and it motivates you. Sometimes stories are designed to motivate you into changing your life or changing how you see things or hearing an example. I remember hearing some of his stories and going, that is impactful. That is something that touched me, I guess, in some ways, and makes me think about, how to do a better job or how to be a better person.
And a lot about Tony Robbins is his presentation of the stories.
Oh,
he has a motivating presence and the way he moves his voice up and down and his energy. It's addictive.
Right.
And so you become compelled in his stories.
Right. And you think of other people that have written songs, the Bruce Springsteens of the world, the Boss.
Yeah, the Boss.
How to take stories, many different, people have written Margaritaville. That's like a 3-minute song, right? And you think about how it's a story though, right?
It is a story. And how Jimmy Buffett.
Jimmy Buffett, how these musicians have been able to take, a really interesting points of view and things and put it into words and change our lives in some regards.
Country songs.
Country.
Always about the breakup.
The guitar, the pickup truck. There's like 20 different themes there that are all tied together. Oh, my. Well, I know another story that comes to mind here just to share with the audience. This is work related too, all right? But it's always, I was thinking this morning, what can I bring in here? And this was kind of a funny one. So I'm with this company, and we've got managers or executives, I guess, and we go to state parks every 3 or 4 months. A state park, right? And they're middle of nowhere.
For like a meeting.
For a meeting, quarterly meeting.
Okay.
And then part of that was then to get to bond and go out to some local bar or something and hang out in there and tell stories and bond together, right? So we're
and try to outdo everybody.
Yeah, outdo. So here's a new guy. I remember he was like the financial guy, right? And and he's telling about what a great athlete he was and a superstar or something like that. Just to the point of
course he was.
To a point where I had to challenge this guy, right? And I said,
okay, I can top that.
I said, when you really stop and think about it, it's mind over matter. It's one of those types of things. And I said, I used to run in high school. I didn't run very fast, but I bet I could. I haven't lost it. And somehow the guy said something that sparked me to compete against this guy. I'm not big in competing.
Okay, Gary, I just don't even know what to say.
So then I said, well, I challenge you. Let's go out here. Here's like a little downtown place in the middle of nowhere. It's got a square, right? The city square. I said, you run one way and I run the other way. We'll see who can come back to the starting point here at the same time. Well, of course, here's where I embellish. The bar empties out, right? Because this is like the competition.
The duel.
The duel. It's like 8:30 at night. Sun is setting. It's in the summertime type of thing. And but I said the big thing is we're running backwards. We're not going to run forwards. We're going to run backwards.
Gary, how's your mind come up with this stuff?
So I remember we both take off, and we meet at the other side, right? We're going different directions. So we cross each other at the other side of and I remember there's this elderly man and woman just watching this. They're just sitting on a picnic bench going, what is going on? What's going on in our little town? Well, meanwhile, the bar is yelling out, our names, cheering us on, right? And we come racing back our different directions, and like 10 feet before we end, and he was ahead of me there for a while. He stumbles and he falls down. He's collapsed. He's completely exhausted. Right?
Okay, he's out.
As I come racing across the finish line backwards and win the competition, right? And beat this guy. And so, but when you stop and think about stories, see that in my mind, that for some reason it didn't matter that much to me at the time, but it became folklore at that company. The owner of that company to this day, 20 years later, the guy probably still tells that story about
Gary, you have left impressions in life. So at the other job, you left the impression of electrocuting that poor boy.
This one running backwards. What have I really accomplished in my life except?
Oh my gosh, Gary. There are people out there saying, that Gary Vandenberg.
He's unemployable.
He's unemployable.
Well, that's, but it is funny how stories do tie it in, and they tie in, day-to-day types of things. And sometimes I do bring in dramatic stories of saying, hey, we need to take these situations seriously. They could evolve into something really bad, too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that comes with experience. If you've had more experiences in life, you can end up doing those types of things.
Sure. Well, I'll tell you what, my stories are so consistent, like with holidays in my family. I always talk about my fabulous Christmases. Gary, to this day, maybe not every single one was, but in my mind, I always see great Christmas mornings with my family. And so when I talk about holidays growing up, and even when my children were little, even to today, I always talk about what a great holiday it was.
Isn't that something? Yeah. But are you only remembering the good things, I guess? That's part of...
Well, I choose not to remember, the presents I got I didn't like, or when I was sick on a Christmas, who knows?
But did you say
always good.
When we do reminisce, or, do we tell only the positive things, or dramatically tell the worst things? What happens in our minds?
I think we try to tell the most interesting things.
Oh, the interesting things.
Yes.
Good or bad. Yes.
That's right. You want to draw your audience into you.
Isn't that funny?
Right? Yeah. Well, have you ever heard a bad story?
A bad story? Yes. Yes, I have.
Oh, gosh. Yes.
And I'm sure somebody will remember that I know close that remember me saying the words Jebediah. Okay. And I was at somewhere is like a dinner. There's like 8 of us, and somebody starts talking about this guy on a hike in the Appalachian Mountains named Jebediah. They bump into this guy, and he's going to help them.
Right.
This story went on probably 45 minutes, right? It was like the most painful, drawn out. And then
lost me.
And then Jebediah, got out his compass, and it's like, where is this going? And it was going nowhere.
And why do you even want to know?
Yeah, no one could relate to it. And at some point, we were all the other people, unfortunately, we were kind of snickering, saying, where is